So if you did not see this, Joe Biden did finally address the nation last night in reference to Israel and Palestine, and also the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. I want to go ahead and forewarn you, Joe Biden is already getting pushback in reference to his address that he gave to Americans. And I want to show you something else too, that a lot of young people are not buying this, guys. And I give shout out to the younger peeps for knowing what's up. But a lot of them are not buying this. They are shaking their heads, and Joe Biden is getting criticism. Will it affect him in 2024? Let's go ahead and get into this address from Joe Biden about the two conflicts that started under his administration.
We're facing an inflection point in history. One of those moments where the decisions we make today are going to determine the future for decades to come. That's what I'd like to talk with you about tonight. You know, early this morning, I returned from Israel. They tell me I'm the first American president to travel there during the war. I met with the prime minister and members of his cabinet. And most movingly, I met with Israelis who had personally lived through horrific horror of the attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. More than 1,300 people slaughtered in Israel, including at least 32 American citizens. Scores of innocents, from infants to the elderly grandparents, Israelis, Americans taken hostage. And as I told the families of Americans being held captive by Hamas, we're pursuing every avenue to bring their loved ones home.
Let's pause here for just a second. Notice who he mentions first. And a lot of people are doing this, by the way. A lot of people are doing this. Let's continue.
As president, there is no higher priority for me than the safety of Americans held hostage. The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world. But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others. In Israel, I saw people who are strong, determined, resilient, and also angry, in shock and in deep, deep pain. I also spoke with President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, and reiterated that the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination.
Here's the first lie. If the United States government is committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination, why is the U.S. government funding Israel? First lie. We are 1 minute, 31 seconds in. We'll give them a buffer because someone was talking right before them. They introduced them. So let's say 1 minute, 40 seconds in. It is very clear. Like, you are not for someone's right for self-determination and their dignity if you support the government and this very state that is oppressing the people, that is occupying the people, and that has essentially established an apartheid state. How can they have any type of dignity? How do you have dignity and self-determination when all the resources are controlled by the group that's oppressing you? How do you have dignity and right to self-determination when 95% of the water that's supplied to you by the group that's oppressing you is dirty water? It's unclean. How do you have the right to self-determination and dignity when the state of Israel also controls the food that comes into Gaza, and they pick and choose what you get to eat and what you don't get to eat? And when you make them mad, they can decide to cut it all off. How? How does that give you dignity? How does it give you dignity to know that you're only allowed to have maybe 2 to 3 hours of electricity every day? And that's if they decide not to cut it off. How does that give you dignity? That's not dignity. How do you hold your head up high, knowing that you are constantly being oppressed? Knowing that you can't even leave within a certain mile radius, that there's a gate, there's a fence surrounding you, that you're not allowed to exit without approval. How do you live in dignity when you're being oppressed? Let's continue. There's more.
The actions of Hamas terrorists don't take that right away. Like so many other, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, which was not done by the Israelis. We mourn.
Did you see that part? Notice how he added that part in? There's been conflict over who did the hospital thing. Like, different news outlets have reported different stories. I'm not even going to touch that one because the story changes with that every day. But there have been churches. The churches have been bombed in Gaza where people were seeking refuge and shelter. Just innocent people.
Every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality.
Let's pause here. He said the people who only want to live in peace. Actually, let's go back to that part. Right about there. Sorry.
Every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity.
Is that all they want? Only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. I think they don't want to be occupied and oppressed. I think they want clean water. I think they want to have the same amount of electricity that the state of Israel has. I think they want to have the right to pick their own food. I think they want to have the right to be free and to not be fenced in. What are you talking about? Peace? How do you have the peace when you can only move from point A to point B? You mean to tell me, Joe Biden, that's all they want? All they want is just to have peace?
You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt since Putin launched his all-out invasion. We've not forgotten the mass graves, the bodies found bearing signs of torture, rape used as a weapon by the Russians, and thousands of Ukrainian children forcibly taken into Russia, stolen from their parents. It's sick. Hamas and
no mention of the Azov battalion.
Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it.
Let's talk about annihilating a neighboring democracy. Who has been pushed out of Israel? Who did the pushing? It was Palestine first. You can see it. We've brought up the maps on the show multiple times. You can see just how the people have been colonized.
Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering.
Let's talk about human shields. When he says, because this is important to know, when you hear people keep saying they're using them as human shields, that actually helps mainstream media push the narrative, and it helps the U.S. government push the narrative that basically Hamas is hiding among the civilians. And that gives the state of Israel an excuse to attack places like the churches. Because that's the rhetoric that CNN and MSNBC, all of them, that's the rhetoric that they're using. They're saying, well, they had to attack those places because Hamas is hiding among the civilians. That's why they keep saying that phrase, human shields. They all have the same vocabulary, the same narrative.
Greatly because of them. Meanwhile, Putin denies Ukraine has or ever had real statehood. He claims the Soviet Union created Ukraine. And just 2 weeks ago, He told the world that if the United States and our allies withdraw, and if the United States withdraw, our allies will as well, military support for Ukraine would have, quote, a week left to live, but we're not withdrawing. I know these conflicts can seem far away, and it's natural to ask, why does this matter to America? So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security.
In other words, Joe Biden is going to continue to give more money to Ukraine and more money to Israel and no money to you.
You know, history has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. They keep going, and the cost and the threats to America and the world keep rising. So if we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine.
I'm going to use that same context there and I'm going to flip it, right? If we don't stop Netanyahu's power and his goal to suppress and oppress what's left of the Palestinian population in Israel, he won't stop there. You see, this is one of the things that the Palestinian Network did tell us at RBN when we interviewed them over a year ago. They said the goal is not to stop with Palestine. They said the goal is to spread even into Jordan. And let's remember, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, we always have to go back to the Minsk Accords. We always have to go back to the fact that NATO was not supposed to expand in that direction. So NATO pushed this war. They pushed it. This didn't happen overnight. Joe Biden is not going to say that. He's not going to acknowledge that because he has to have an excuse to go to war. They're warmongers. Not even on his second term, and he's already has the U.S. government involved in 2 international conflicts, giving millions and millions of dollars abroad. And I just told you the homelessness population has increased under Joe Biden. We don't have money to give everybody health care in this country, but we got millions of dollars to contribute to war.
Putin's already threatened to remind Poland that their Western land was a gift from Russia. One of his top advisors, a former president of Russia, has called Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania Russia's Baltic provinces. These are all NATO allies. For 75 years, NATO has kept peace in Europe. And
you know, NATO, he says NATO has kept peace in Europe. So we're just going to forget that this conflict with Russia and Ukraine didn't start years ago? Back in 2014? We're just going to forget that it didn't start then? NATO was like a troll. You know, it's like you're just going about your business, having a good day, and NATO just drops in your DMs and with some bullshit just to piss you off. That's what NATO reminds me of. NATO was like a troll. Trolls don't like to go away.
Been the cornerstone of American security. And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, we will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. We'll have something that we do not seek. Make it clear, we do not seek. We do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia or fighting against Russia. Beyond
hold them to that.
Europe, we know that our allies and maybe most importantly our adversaries and competitors are watching. They're watching our response in Ukraine as well. And if we walk away and let Putin erase Ukraine's independence, would-be aggressors around the world would be emboldened to try the same. The risk of conflict and chaos could spread in other parts of the world.
This is the excuse they always use, that if we don't try to contain this person, this can spread, and that's the danger. That's the same excuse they used in reference to communism going back to Vietnam. That's the same excuse they used in reference to Saddam Hussein, who they said had weapons of mass destruction, only he did not. Getting us into the war, the same excuse they used with the war in Iraq. This is the same excuse that they use. If we don't contain it, it can spread. Other leaders can start doing the same thing. Same excuses that they use. Oh, and in reference to independence, he said that Putin doesn't want Ukraine to have like independence. Zelensky doesn't want the citizens in Ukraine to have independence because Zelensky has already threatened not to hold democratic elections anymore, but it's supposed to be a democracy. And this is one of those things that, again, Biden's not going to tell you, and people supporting Joe Biden is not going to tell you, is the fact that how can you sit up there and continue to call Ukraine a democracy? And you know damn well, if you're reading the news, if you're paying attention, Zelensky has already made public statements that he's not going to have like these democratic elections anymore. He's just going to pick people, just do whatever the fuck he wants to do. That's not a democracy.
In the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, especially in the Middle East, Iran is supporting Russia in Ukraine, and it's supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region, and will continue to hold them accountable, I might add. The United States and our partners across the region are working.
He said right there, he said who Iran is choosing to support, and pay attention to what he snuck in there. We will continue to hold them accountable. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. I really do believe that Joe Biden is going to try to use the conflict between Israel and Palestine as an excuse to start a war with Iran. I really do believe that's the next step. So stay tuned with that. They've been wanting this anyway.
Working to build a better future for the Middle East. One where the Middle East is more stable, better connected to its neighbors, and through innovative projects like the India-Middle East-Europe Rail Corridor that I announced this year at the summit of the world's biggest economies.
Why are you looking to control what happens in the Middle East? Not your countries, not your countries at all.
More predictable markets, more employment, less rage, less grievances, less war when connected. It benefits the people who would benefit the people of the Middle East and will benefit us. American leadership is what holds the world together.
Here it is, folks. Here it is. This is what it's all about.
The Europe Rail Corridor that I announced this year at the summit of the world's biggest economies. More predictable markets, more employment, less rage, less grievances, less war when connected. It benefits the people who would benefit the people of the Middle East and will benefit us.
That's what it's all about. It benefits the people and it will benefit us. It's about what benefits the United States. That's what this is about. He's letting the cat out of the bag. Like I said, people are really coming after him after this address.
American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with. To put all that at risk, if we walk away from Ukraine, if we turn our backs on Israel, it's just not worth it. That's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine, is a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations.
So he's going to send an emergency request to Congress to increase this budget, but there never is an emergency request sent to Congress to give us the needs that we need. Where was the emergency request to send millions and millions of dollars to people in Maui? Screw the $700. Where was the emergency request to send millions of dollars to people in East Palestine, Ohio, who are still breathing in toxic air, by the way? No emergency request. Where was the emergency request for the people in Jackson, Mississippi, who had brown water coming out of their faucets? The emergency request for people in Flint who had to drink and deal with dirty water for years while local officials went unpunished. The emergency requests are not for us. The emergency requests are for the countries abroad that fit and suit the interests of the U.S. government corporate greed, and the military industrial complex. That is when the urgency comes in for our government, not for the people. And you know what? You know who made it this way? What made it this way? Money. Super PACs, PACs, allowing corporate money into electoral politics was the biggest mistake. Biggest mistake. We're going to show you something about that in reference to Richie Torres later on tonight, where politicians will no longer be holding to their constituents. Politicians now belong to and are owned by their donors and the military industrial complex. That's what made it this way. We need public financing of all elections, all of it. We need the corporate money out. We need the military industrial complex out. We need all of it out. All of it. And honestly, if I had it my way, my wish, my dream, get the corporate money out, do public financing in all elections. And honestly, everybody that's sitting in the House, everybody that's sitting in the Senate, all of them got to go and start anew. A whole new crew. A whole new crew in the House, a whole new crew in the Senate. All of them got to go. They're too corrupt. They've been there too long. Some of them been there so long, they don't even remember when they started. Some of them been there so long, they just can't remember. When did I come in here? When you got senators and congressmen and women, 80 years old, 90 years old, well past retirement age, just holding up a seat to keep the status quo. All of them got to go. Replace all of them. You got to start anew. You see, this was a mistake with Justice Democrats, putting them into a snake-infested pit. You got to get all the snakes out the pit. All of them got to go. Because they're all corrupt. And you need to start with a whole new crew. That's what I'd do if it was my way. And they wouldn't be a part of these parties. It wouldn't be, we got to get this many Democrats, this Republican. No, get rid of the parties. Get rid of the money. And start anew.
Help us keep American troops out of harm's way. Help us build a world that is safer, more peaceful, more prosperous for our children and grandchildren. In Israel, we must make sure that they have what they need to protect their people today and always. The security package I'm sending to Congress and asking Congress to do is an unprecedented commitment to Israel's security that will sharpen Israel's qualitative military edge, which we've committed to, the qualitative military edge. We're going to make sure Iron Dome continues to guard the skies over Israel. We're going to make sure other hostile actors in the region know that Israel is stronger than ever and prevent this conflict from spreading.
That's the goal, just to make sure that Israel is stronger than ever. They're going to continue to fund the Iron Dome. This is why AOC's vote, Jamal Bowman's vote, this is why it was so problematic at that point in time. Continue to fund the Iron Dome to protect Israel's skies. Nothing to protect the skies of Gaza or the West Bank. We're going to stop it here because I have other videos to get into. Because he was getting ratioed for this. Like, people are not happy. Even News Nation came after this. This video here, they said Biden's address sent mixed messages. Let's get into this from News Nation.
Sean Spicer is with us, the former White House press secretary and President Trump. He's also a News Nation contributor. And Johanna Mosca, she's a News Nation political contributor, previously served as President Obama's White House Director of Press Advance. Sean, take it away.
He could have won tonight. The imminent issue facing us is supporting Israel. If he had focused on that tonight, every Republican would have put out a statement saying, I agree with the president on our need to support our ally Israel tonight. We need to give them the support, the weaponry, etc., the funding they need to defeat Hamas. Full stop.
Interrupting him right here and says, notice he says every Republican would have came out and supported him if he made that statement. The Democrats would have done so too. This is not a partisan issue. in reference to supporting Israel. The Democrats are doing it too. There's a few in the House that have spoken out against it. Very, very, very few. But the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are both on board for this.
Stop. I was there. I'm reading this just from a communication standpoint. And this is, you've made my point, though. You keep talking about how he mixed in Ukraine. Yeah. I agree with you. I actually think that's the point. This is, he mixed messages. I was listening to the speech saying, what do you want me to be for? Because you're telling me on one hand that I've got to be for Israel. Then you're telling me that we've got weapons, that we're backfilling Ukraine. We've got to stand up to Putin. And I'm like, for 17 minutes, he was all over the place. Tonight, if he had gotten up saying, I just returned from Israel, they are under attack, they are our closest ally, this is why we need to do it, you would have had universal...
You make a totally fair point.
Thank
all
you.
Right? No, and I agree with a lot of...
They could have let him finish, but I want to jump in and say this part right here. He's mad because Biden also brought in Ukraine. The reason Biden brought in Ukraine is because there's been a lot of pushback with people saying, can the U.S. actually support two wars at this point in time, right? So that's why he brought back in Ukraine. And then also Zelensky has been whining and complaining and saying all the attention is taken off of him now. Can you believe this guy? How are you going to continue to support me? Now you're involved. It's all about this country now and not about my country anymore. So that's why he brought it up and brought it in there. But what Spicer is letting you know is that with his particular side, they're all in for it, for Israel. But once you bring in Ukraine, it's a no. And I said this before. The same people saying, no funding to Ukraine. You change the country to Israel, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's continue.
What you're saying. But don't you agree with me? You make the point that if he had just come out talking about Israel, Republicans would not have come out supporting
Yes, they would have.
Fox News would not have done an analysis saying, bravo. Because, by the way, Brit Hume tonight on Fox talked about how great he thought the speech was. I didn't think it was that great. But that's
I'm just saying, but here's my point. Ukraine's been going on for months. He could have given the Ukraine speech anytime. Right now, America needs to be united with Israel and what's going on and against the terrorist barbaric actions of Hamas. Full stop. You could have done that Ukrainian speech anytime. It was like, hey, let's add it in.
All right. Look, Johanna, I agree with Sean on that point. But here's the point that I want to make is I don't believe that Republicans would have come out if he'd given the speech that both Sean and I think he probably should have given. I do not think they would have come out and said, oh, good for President Biden. We support him here. It just seems we're in this environment where you just can't do that.
It really is. I wish I was there with you guys in person. We'd have so much fun debating this. But but Sean, I think that, the president has never sent a tingle up any moderator or any Democrat or Republican's legs. That's not what he does when he speaks. But he has been very consistent on this. He believes that this is a precipice, that there's a clash between democracies and autocracies, and he very much believes that Putin is behind very much. Iran, yes, an actor, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of this is intertwined. And he is making the case that all of this is intertwined and that the U.S. needs to stand strong. Now, you and I have both traveled with presidents around the world, and I never want to see a world where America is not the superpower.
You heard that? Because this is what they want. These people are war hawks. She's from the Obama administration. He's from the Trump administration. These people are just war hawks. They want America to always be the superpower. They don't want any other country to have that spot. And any other country that they think is going to be a threat, they're just going to try to take them out. They'll demonize them first, try to get more Americans on board with the fact that this is a bad country. So they'll demonize them and smear them first. And then they'll find an excuse, find a reason to start a conflict with them. And they don't always have to have a reason either. We'll play a little bit more here.
Of America as a superpower because we are more right and we are more just than any of these autocracies are. Now,
we are more right and we are more just than any of the other autocracies. You guys you hear this rhetoric? We're more right and more just than any of the other countries, you guys.
How we're going to get there, I think, is an absolute debate the Republicans and Democrats need to have. Whether Ukraine and Israel are all intertwined and how we take every action, including sanctions, against them, I am for that debate. But the problem is right now, we've got a House that doesn't even have a speaker. So this is a real problem that we're in this back and forth fighting. The majority of us all agree that we should have these fundings. If the extremes of the left were controlling our party, we wouldn't have a funding bill either.
I think my point is
the extremes of the left.
Now the extreme of the right is controlling the party. If we came to bipartisan consensus, we would have these funding bills.
The extremes of the rights. And what that tells you is they want to bring everybody into the center. That's what they want to do. Let me know if you find anything, Eric. Someone told me in the chat that Peter Dow actually issued a response in reference to Joe Biden's address, but I'm going to go to this video as well. CNN actually is being called out by Palestinians in Ramallah in the West Bank. Check this out, because see, people aren't falling for it. Now, this is Sarah Sidner. I want to remind you who Sarah Sidner is. Sarah Sidner is the same commentator who apologized about spreading the lie on CNN about the beheaded babies thing. She came back on Twitter and issued a public statement and said that she was incorrect. She's sorry about that, yada, yada. So just to tell you who this person is, I'm telling you that because when you hear what's said to her, I think you're going to understand why. Listen to this.
Journalists gathered here because this is kind of where the clashes happens. So, all right.
You are genocide supporters. Okay, you are not welcome here. Genocide supporters. Fuck CNN. Fuck CNN. Genocide supporters.
Okay, what he was saying is he was telling Sarah Sidner that CNN, that they are genocide supporters. You are not welcome here. So that's why I had to remind you who Sarah Sidner was. That's why I wanted you to hear that. Let me finish this.
All right, you see that people are very angry. They do not like the way in which that CNN has been reporting the story. You hear that. But we're fine. But what you are seeing is the heightened fear, anger, frustration with what's happening.
No, what you're seeing is people telling you the truth and letting you know that they understand that you are part of a propagandized network and they see you for what you really are, Sarah. That's what they're doing. They know, they've been paying attention. They've been watching. They know exactly what CNN is on. We can go ahead and put that video up, Eric. So apparently it was just brought to my attention. One of you in the chat said it, that apparently, I guess, Cornel West issued a response in reference to Joe Biden's address. So this wasn't planned. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here now. Here it is. So it says Cornel West Biden's Oval Office address was pathetic and a declaration of war. Listen to this. Let's go.
We need strong American leadership. Upon hearing the speech of President Biden yesterday, it was sad. It was disappointing. It was pathetic. At the very moment where we need to talk about ceasefire, we don't hear the word. At the very moment when we need to talk about diplomatic procedures for just peace, we see more a declaration of war. We find over $100 billion for war. Oh, we can't find that when it comes to health care, when it comes to jobs with a living wage, when it comes to housing, when it comes to quality living of everyday people. We find it when it comes to war. Thank God we have fellow citizens like Jewish Voices for Peace, like Palestinian Voices, Arab Voices, Black Voices, Latino Voices that stand for principle, that stand against war and war making. Even Judge Paul on the inside resigns because he sees more war. Even Sister Cori Bush, even Sister Rashida Tlaib within the Democratic Party echo the deep concerns that I have. I believe, and I've said over and over again, and I'll say it till the day I die, that a precious Palestinian baby has the same value as a precious Israeli baby, and a precious Israeli baby has the same value as a precious Palestinian baby. And when you look at the world through those lenses, it leads toward an indictment of what President Biden's talking about, an indictment of his policies that don't take seriously the equal status and equal dignity of Palestinians and Israelis. There will never be peace for precious Israelis without justice for precious Palestinians. That is the bottom line. We cannot live in denial any longer. So let us look for better vision, grander courage, and most importantly, American leadership that can bring us together based on principles rooted in the empowerment of poor and working people, rooted in the empowerment of the least of these. Yes, that's what grand American leadership is all about. And that's what I aspire to and attempt to enact.
So that was my first time seeing that, because I didn't know this had happened until who was it that said it in that? Marcos told me that this video was up. So that was my first time seeing it. And so I will say that I think that Dr. West did a really good job there. And also, it's something that needs to be said, because the reality is this: not once did Joe Biden call for any type of ceasefire. Not once did he's talking about peace, but you talking about you still gonna give them monies for bombs and shit. Get out of here, Joe. Get out of here. Now, I want to show you some of the hypocrisy. Now, Kim Iverson called this out in reference to this particular issue. And then I want to show you, where do most people stand in reference to this particular issue. I'm going to show you a poll from CBS YouGov. First, let's listen to what Kim Iverson said, what she discovered about the hypocrisy. Are you a hypocrite? Poll result says 30% of you are. Listen to this.
I did a poll today. We want to go ahead and put this poll up. Let's go ahead. I did a series of questions today on my Twitter account. Now, granted, my Twitter following is, right, I mean, every Twitter following is going to be skewed to the people that want to follow a particular person. I follow a variety of people, a lot of people I don't agree with, but I just follow them to get the variety of viewpoints. But you can pretty much safely assume that's typically not the situation. So I get it that this is a skewed poll. This is definitely not some scientific, well-done poll. I just wanted to put it out there and see how people answered. So this is a series of questions that I put out there today. Should the Palestinian people be disarmed is the question. And the majority of people said no, the Palestinian people should not be disarmed. Let's go to the next one. Follow-up question. Are you pro-gun rights? Are you a pro-gun rights American? So this is the question I wanted. If you think they should be disarmed, but you are a pro-Second Amendment American, that is an inconsistent, hypocritical viewpoint. And the people that said that they are pro-gun rights American, they said, yes, I am, and I voted no, that the Palestinian people should not be disarmed. So that's a consistent viewpoint. So your answer should be, yes, I am pro-Second Amendment, and no, they should not be disarmed. So 44%. So the majority of people are consistent in that viewpoint. The people that said, yes, I am a pro-Second Amendment American, and I voted yes, they should be disarmed, that is 30% of the people right there who are hypocritical. Because I'm just saying the Palestinian people. So 30%.
So let's look at this. Listen to what she's saying. The first line, people said yes, and I voted no. That's actually the correct position if you say you are pro-gun rights for American, right? But this is this bit right here, the 29.9%. Yes, and I voted yes. So yes, I am pro-gun rights, and yes, I think the Palestinian people should be disarmed. What Kim is saying, that for the people who selected that second option, there's some hypocrisy here. Let me go back just a little bit.
The Palestinian people. So 30% are hypocrites right there. I should have gun rights, but you should not have gun rights. Okay.
Okay, people. So you know what that tells you? That tells you that even some of the people who took that poll that say, yes, we should have gun rights, they only want gun rights for certain people, right? So I wonder what would happen if you change the country. Now, how do most Americans feel in reference to this particular issue? Let's bring up this poll here from CBS YouGov. This is interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Should the U.S. send weapons/supplies to Israel? This is broken up by party. In the Democratic Party, 47% say they should. Independents, 45% say they should. And Republicans, 57% say they should. Who says should not? So when we say they should not send weapons supplies to Israel, 53% of Joe Biden's own party says they should not. The majority of Democrats said no. 55% of independents said they should not. The majority of independents said no. And then 43%, this is a big one, 43% of Republicans said they should not. Now, the majority of the Republicans said they should, but that is still a significant amount, that 43% for the Republican Party who said that they should not. The point is this, folks. When you look at the Democrats and the independents can go either way sometimes, right? Or third party. The majority of Democrats and independents said no. You should not be sending these supplies to them. There's another one. Should the U.S. send humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza? 70% of Joe Biden's own party said they should. 59% of independents said they should. 41% of Republicans said they should. Even some of the Republicans, listen to this. Who says they should not send that aid? 30% of Dems, 41% of independents, 59% of Republicans. So what we're seeing is, yes, even still, the majority of Republicans don't want to send the aid to Palestinians in Gaza. And the majority of Republicans do want to send weapons to Israel. But still, you still have 41% of Republicans that said you should. The Democrats and the independents, the majority of those two groups said you should send the aid to Palestinians and you should not send weapons to Israel. What this tells me is that mainstream media has lost control of the narrative. This tells me that more Americans are awake and they know what the hell is really going on. And something like this poll has CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the Biden administration. It has them shaking in their boots right now because they are starting to realize that more and more Americans, particularly the younger ones, are actually in support of the Palestinian people. And this could actually affect Joe Biden when we talk about the 2024 election. Something to think about, folks. Let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Old Crow, for the super chat. Just sending some love. Is it just me not being a conspiracy? But it seems like AICAP has almost complete control over the elected officials. Oh, did you mean APAC maybe? Maybe you meant APAC, but look, there's a lot of money with these PACs. Thank you, Jay. I question the intelligence of those who can watch this dangerous warmongering and still say with a straight face, but Trump. David says, don't forget Sabby. Maui just got a lousy $700. Yep. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Aaron. Cornelia says term limits for Congress and Senate and Supreme Courts. PPB now. Thank you, Nambians, for the super chat. Folks need to wake up, for we are 90 seconds to midnight. Soon we shall all be peering through the looking glass in horror. Thank you, Jay. The Chicago City Council just passed a resolution condemning Hamas and supporting Israel. We still have Ukraine flags flying downtown. The propagandizing is out, or excuse me, the propagandizing is of this city is complete. Or I think you mean, propagandizing of this city is complete. Thank you, Kush Renata. If you're Black and know Black history in the U.S. and can't sympathize with what it's like being a Palestinian right now, your curse word YouTube banned. Thank you, Jim. Gun right is more nuanced than that. The question was not, should guns be banned in the U.S.? You can be pro-gun and also pro some kind of control of weapons in the U.S. Yeah, but I think the point that Kim was trying to make is that it seems like some people kind of looked at that question as, I just mean for me. I just mean for me to have those rights, not everybody else. Thank you for the super chat. Stop sniffing kids. Oh, wow. It says, Sabby, you're the best. Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. That name, that's going to sit with me. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Oh, man, that was going to follow me. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I'll go even further than just getting corporate money out, but replace corporate with cooperatives. So now the money that finances political campaigns becomes democratized, more representative of the people. Ratify an amendment into U.S. Constitution saying that Congress must first ask the people before sending military weapons abroad by putting a congressional ballot initiative law before the people. I second that. I second that. We have no say in reference to where our tax dollars go. We really don't. Like, they just take our money and do whatever. You guys notice this?